Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wheels Up Live. I'm ID Bound,
And I'm Felix.
and we're pre recording this one for you because we have a very special guest today whose schedule doesn't permit us a live stream on Sunday. And so I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's going to be a very interesting long form segment today.
Yes.
But as always, we'll start with our news of the week. And one of the tidbits coming up this week is that Any Builds is hard at work on an update, and they gave a little preview of LAX. And I think that we can all agree that LAX is a monster airport. I personally really like this scenery, always have, but performance has sometimes been, well, a little more challenging. And this update promises improvements in performance as well as some modifications and updates to the Tom Bradley International Terminal. Felix, I know when we were talking a little earlier, you had a very funny comment about the TBIT over at LAX
Oh
that
yes. Oh
definitely
yes.
made
That
you
some
chuckle.
people have called it Tom Brady International Terminal, which I think is hilarious.
Right.
I have heard
What?
that. It's obviously Tom Bradley, but no, it's I think we've been kind of screaming. I know I have screaming at the hillside about any Bills and
Yeah.
their performance. I remember when
Right.
JFK first came out. I don't care if you had 4090, you had the latest Gen i9. You were slideshowing it on final into JFK. LAX is kind of the same. I run Samsung,
Yeah.
the Volume One, which has Miami, LA, and all that. And I'm really looking forward to this because I do fly into LA a lot because I fly on Vatsim and there's a lot of control. There's always at least one or two Vatsim controllers on for a lot. I think they got the Vat USA does an Iron Mic competition, which is amount of time in the month that they're on, and I think like they usually get above 30% of the month. Which, if you think about it, in the 30-day span, thirty
That's a
percent of
lot.
the time that they're on, that's a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I love flying in SoCal. I think it's beautiful. I think it's, in my opinion, it's one of the best looking places in the sim,
It is.
especially SoCal. That it looks fantastic, and so I'm really looking forward to it because we're gonna have the 777 coming out. We don't know what the performance is going to be, and LAX is a 777 mecca. It's there's a lot of flights you're going to be able to do at LAX. So yeah, looking forward to this update. And I also appreciate from Any Builds that they are taking the customer feedback about performance seriously, and that they are addressing those issues, because that has been kind of like the elephant in the room.
Yeah. It's their Achilles
It's
heel.
it is their
Yeah.
Achilles heel. They make a beautiful scenery, but at what cost? And so a lot of simmers, even though Microsoft is very optimized, it's still a flight sim at the end of the day. And a lot of
Yeah.
simmers, computer, ever since COVID, the prices of components have just gone up, and they've just stayed there. They haven't gone back
Yeah.
down, and so, or at least they haven't gone down to a price that's appreciable for most people. And so, this is a most welcome update in
Yeah.
that respect.
I'm with you on LAX in terms of being a great destination. I did a significant amount of GA flying in and around the LA basin. It is very well represented in the sim. I think that the scenery has always blended nicely with it. But as you say, it's a big airport. There's a lot of resources, and so optimization is always appreciated in these contexts, especially as we continue on with more and more complex planes. I do think on the performance side, long run, perhaps improvements in 2024, MSFS 2024 may ultimately be something that helps all of us because I do think MSFS 2020 runs well. It does. If there is a better use of multi-threaded, multi-core processing in 2024, I think that could make a big difference. Hypothetically, there was some of that I thought in X-Plane 12, but I've yet to see
And
any
hopefully
big
they fix
differences.
the DLSS issues as well for those who have NVIDIA cards and to
Right, and we need to
get
get out of DX12 beta, and we need to
yeah.
fix the draw and terrain issues with the
Yeah.
photogrammetry and or just the underlying text, ground texture coming through on
Yeah.
sceneries. Those are some things that
Yes.
that also hopefully will be fixed. I have some hope that that is the case. Another announcement this week, although product's not actually out, but here's another preview. This is Oslo from Aerosoft, and this is a Joe Erlin project. Most of you probably know him from doing the Aerosoft Brussels scenery, which is, I think, one of our better sceneries. Period. In the sim, it's very nicely done, and he has been working on this one for some time. I think he's also working on Frankfurt for them. I think there's actually a little team that works with him based on what I've seen on these previews and discussions related around these previews. But we already have an Oslo in the sim. I'm drawing a blank on whose it is this second, but like we've seen, there are more and more developers who are deciding to work on something that has already been done and trying to do it better,
Yep.
which I find to be an interesting trend and one that I fully support, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're reaching a point. We're gonna have a guest next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be Andrew from Vertical Sim. So, kind of more famous for Ontario, working on St. Petersburg or and St. Pete Airport, St. Pete Clearwater,
Yeah.
and Tampa, obviously. But it's kind of interesting because I've heard mixed bag with this. I've heard some developers like Flight Beam Mirror, where sometimes they do try to get a scenery in because they don't want to be playing second fiddle. We just had a news segment a couple weeks ago where there were two Barcelonas that were released basically within the space of 24 hours.
Yep.
And it's one of those things that uh, I don't know until we have real sales data on some of this stuff. Like I don't
Which
know
we never
because
do.
which we never do, and I really couldn't tell you if as far as like what a developer's thinking unless we get to ask them. I've heard it both ways. I've heard, oh, we're fine, but then again, if you're any builds, you can crank out 5-6 sceneries a year, and you can fully support them because you got a massive team. If you're Mir, you can crank out one scenery a year because you have legacy products that you have to update, and you also and support, and you're also trying to develop new products. And so I wonder if that's a factor when we come to these sceneries, when you talk about like, hey, we have another Oslo, right? And I think choice is great because at the end of the day, the more choices we have, we're going to get higher quality products, right? And sometimes some people don't necessarily need a higher quality product if they're just going to fly there a couple times and then call it quits, but they don't want to fly to default, which I can't stand default. And so
Don't worry, the scenery gateway is going to solve all of those
oh my
problems for
gosh,
you.
yeah, the same one that Laminar Research has had, and look at
Yeah.
some of those airports.
Well,
um,
I think one of the things that you've hit on that I note for this is that there are still some independent single person developers, somebody like Mir, um, and but I you mentioned sales. All I can assume is that the sales opportunities must be significant enough to warrant the size of the teams that we seem to see at places like Aerosoft now. Well, I don't know exactly how many people they are, but I know there's a team working on several airports and any builds and somebody, I assume, like MK Studios. Uh,
yeah.
I'm not positive about them, but plainly something is happening there. The one sales number that I think any of us have seen besides sales of Microsoft Flight Simulator just generally, or how many users there are, is
Sure.
that they sold 100,000 copies of the Antonov
Yeah.
for the fundraiser that they were doing. I mean, that 100,000 copies is a lot of copies. It's not. It's a small percentage of the total users, according to Jorg
Well,
and
what's
his
that? What's
figures that
that?
he
$2
has.
million though? That's yeah.
I don't
That's
know what they were charging
or
for it.
yeah. No, it was $20. on the marketplace, and it
Okay.
100% went to
Yeah.
Antonov, so it would have been $2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is great, but my only point there being, if Jorg has said they have
Yes.
somewhere in excess of 12 million users, but they really have a smaller group that's it's hardcore simmers using it more often, et cetera. But even that number was quite large based on what they had said at Expo last summer. So, obviously there's real opportunities there, and I think that we can see in terms of who is following that train from P3D, from X-Plane to come to MSFS, and new entrants, that there are some real opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Flight Sim 2 that's kind of always been, it's almost like Pokemon, where it's kind of like you got to catch them all kind of thing with some people. And it's I think there's a lot of that. I think there are a lot of people that are, I pay for a lot of sceneries. I'm not really, worried about that. Because a lot, especially, I mean, I'm an FS9 FSX. I started in '98. And I welcome the prices of Microsoft Flight Simulator, because man,
Yeah.
P3D sceneries 30 a pop. That gets
Yep.
old quick, and they're not
30
even.
a
And
pop, and not a one of them on sale.
yeah,
Anyway,
never, yeah, never. And so that's why it's a dead sim. But
exactly.
but
Um,
yeah,
one of our other stories this week, just briefly, we talked a little bit about this plane last week in our long haul segment, but in the intervening days, TFDI has announced that the MD-11 will be feature complete by the end of the month. That doesn't mean it's coming out at the end of the month, for those of you who've been waiting on it, but it's allegedly going to be feature complete at that time. We shall see. I know you have some strong feelings about that.
yeah. Um, yeah, no feature. And first of all, I'm going to preface that obviously this is a work in progress. Both Dulles and I are collector's edition owners, which is why we have this aircraft, which is why we have the access to this aircraft at this
Which
point
is
in
how I took
time.
this screenshot.
Yeah, which is how he took the screenshot, obviously. Um, we do want to preface that, in our opinion, what we were kind of billed for collector's edition was not what we got. I have flown it all of 3 times. 3 times. I know Dulles has flown it less,
Yeah, that's right.
and we are we're kind of disappointed. I'm disappointed. Quite frankly, I'm disappointed in. I know that they say feature complete, whatever that means. I'm fed up. I'm done with it. I really am. I'm going to go out there and say I regret the purchase, and I hope that developers take this as a sign. I do not want to see pre-sales ever again. I don't want to see pre-sales. I don't want to see special editions where you only get one very rare niche variant. None of that. I want a product that you can fly, that is finished. And I know people give PMDG a lot of crap, but at the end of the day, I know when the 777 releases the first day, I'm going to be able to do the same flights that I've been doing for the last 10 years on that airplane. I have no confidence or faith in that from what I've seen with the TFDI. So I mean, they need to come to terms with themselves, and they just need to, they need to deliver. That's the end all be all. I am not looking forward to it anymore, and I'm just, quite frankly, I'm not satisfied. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Well, I'll say that there was a lot of grief given to TFDI about having the collector's edition to start with, then having a pre-sale after that, and I tend to be of the mind that I'm not going to sit here and fret about whether or not the pre-sale is good, bad, or indifferent. I made a decision to buy it. I'm not necessarily, quote unquote, regretting my decision. I, I don't feel that strongly in that sense. What I am concerned about, though, is that as you said, I don't think it's coming in as the product that we thought it was going to be. Now, that doesn't mean they won't be tweaking things or making changes or doing things that will improve the product over time, but it's not there yet. They know it's not there yet. At least they know it's not there yet, but it's a little bit of a challenge. And then there were some things about the version that implied that some of this process had been hobbled by the fact that they were developing for both MSFS and P3D at the same time. And yes, when they started this endeavor, P3D was still alive and kicking, but times change and they didn't change with it. And perhaps we're all suffering a bit. So, where we really might be waiting to see the end result that we expected is version 2, maybe
Yeah.
a year from now or 2 years from now, or whenever they do that, if they don't just throw up their hands at some point. We shall see. All right. Well, now that we've kicked that horse a little bit hard, but hey, why not? We can do that.
Yeah.
I would like to welcome Hawks 1326 to the show. Welcome, sir.
All right.
I think some of you may already know him
Wait
from
one
Twitch,
second.
right? Your Twitch operation, correct?
Yes, correct.
I'm getting that right.
Um,
I
wait
think I
one second.
lost the video feed
Yeah, I
on
think
there.
we're lost. Yeah, we lost the video feed.
There you
We
go.
go.
Hi.
Okay,
Hello. There we go.
Yeah.
working now.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Techno, I can't hear him at all, of course. You
I
know
got
how
rid of
that
the
goes with
watermark,
this
so I think
system,
we're good here too. It looks
as
pretty
we
good
have
right
heard.
now.
Maybe I can hear him now. No,
Can you hear it? Can we?
it's fine. I'll get it here in a moment.
Yep.
Even when we pre-record, it likes to fight.
Yeah. Stand
How do you like
by
that?
for technical difficulties. Yeah.
Can you cut this
That's
this whole part
fine.
out? Is that
It's
how that
it
works?
wouldn't be one of these without it doing that to
No. It
us.
would.
It
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't like that. There
Yep.
we go. Let's see here.
But anyways, Hawks, man, how are you? How you
How are
doing?
you doing?
Doing great. Yeah.
Uh,
Just came off the mid at 6
Hang
a.m.
on
this
here.
morning, so a little bit tired, but
All right.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Good to hear,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So just a little background on how we got to know each other. This is COVID times, right? So
Oh
COVID,
yeah.
we're all bored out of our minds, looking at stuff
Golden
to
era
do.
of flight sim streaming,
That's
man.
right, the golden era of flight sim streaming.
We had some
Everybody's at
big
home.
names.
Yeah, so Sheed, for those of you who do not know, is a real world pilot, and he was a Twitch streamer. He stepped back, and I think he just wants to be more in private. But Hawks, I was commenting on the video, and they said, "Hey, go watch this guy." And I know people always do that, but I actually went and watched him, and I found him
Well,
quite entertaining.
I'm afraid that I may have bumped.
So
I'm afraid I may have bumped Felix now.
Oh no.
yes, that's fantastic.
This is it. Just cannot be made
Oh
to
man.
do what I want it to do. So we'll just give it a second here while I
Fantastic.
fix that. And
But
hopefully he's here. Are you here? No. I can hear you.
Yep,
All right.
just waiting for video to pop up for him.
Yeah, I can't see the video either. Oh dear.
I tend to bring this to my streams. Just I don't know how many streams I end up having to redo because of some sort of technical difficulty. I don't know. I think I'm just cursed.
There we go.
okay, am I back? Is
Now we
everybody
have
back?
something.
Yeah, we
All
got you
right,
now.
we're back.
Yeah.
We'll just
so,
keep going. We'll
yeah,
just
yeah.
keep going on.
Yeah,
Don't worry
we
about
got
it.
We're not going to worry about it. This is
Right.
one day we'll be professional. But for
Nice.
Honestly, it's I think that we've been trying to use this platform, and it has turned into quite a challenge.
yes,
Quite a challenge. It just it doesn't like us.
and just to kind of finish up. So I saw Hawks. I saw a stream, and it was fantastic. And he's a funny guy. He's very affable. And
Too
then I
kind.
found out later on, some of the things about him. So we kind of primed ourselves for this, as we always do. And so yeah, Hawks, kind of tell us about who you are and some of your aviation background, if
Yeah.
you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I'm Hawks1326. You can call me Alex. ZS. Those are my OIs, operating initials. Otherwise, Z. A lot of people call me Z. So for my aviation background, I went to the University of North Dakota from 2003 to 2008. graduated with a minor in professional flight and a major in air traffic. Um, it's under their aeronautical stuff. There was like a whole headliner to it. Yeah, initially I wanted to be a pilot. I remember it was back in our eighth grade field trip going to DC, flying back from DC to Chicago, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. The pilots gave me a tour of the cockpit. It was a 727. It's
Oh,
American. Oh, it was incredible, man. So that plane holds a special place in my heart. But doing this flight, coming on the way back, I remember this just picturesque moment, and that was the moment in which I turned to my mom and I said, "I want to be a pilot." I was looking out the window and I could see dark storm clouds that had just passed over Chicago. They're over Michigan, and this beautiful sunset off in the west, and it's highlighting downtown Chicago, and it was just epic, absolutely epic. That's when I said I want to be a pilot. My mom thought I was ridiculous at that moment. As a kid, I wanted to be a wrestler, professional wrestler, professional dinosaur, meteorologist. I think that was the sanest thing my mom had heard from me. So
Right. The dinosaur one
the
was really
dinosaur,
hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would tuck
Yeah.
my arms in and just go
Right.
chase around the family animals. But honestly, that's what did it for me. I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm going to do this. So I reviewed Embry Riddle. I took a look at Purdue University because they have a very good, astute air traffic program, as well as flight program. And then North Dakota is really what I settled on because of you could get in-state tuition. I mean, that was like the cheapest option there. After a year, you could apply for residency and then get the local rate, which is much cheaper, much more affordable.
yeah,
Um, it was right around 2008 when I was ready to hit the ground running. I had industry contacts all lined up. I was planning on going to the airlines. I only had 250 hours, maybe 50 hours of total time twin engine aircraft. But I was ready to hop in, and that's when the economy tanked.
Yep.
So I decided to throw my application in for air traffic. I didn't really expect anything of it. I worked for Best Buy for a little bit at corporate in Minneapolis. And then I got the offer. I was supposed to go to Chicago O'Hare. That was my initial offer. I did not go there because out of 16 people that had gotten selected, 15 had already washed out. So they gave me a list of places that I could pick from. I wanted to stay relatively close to home, so I picked one. I've been at this specific facility for coming up on 14 years.
oh man,
Wow.
So
nice.
that'll be this November will be 14 in the agency. It is an up-down facility, so Tower Tracon. I still hold my pilot's licenses. I've got a commercial with instrument multi, um, and let's see what else do I got. High performance complex. I mentioned that to you, Felix. It's yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean that really helped me out with my career, kind of understanding what pilots are capable of doing
sure.
versus just going in blindly and just doing the air traffic side. So I'm really grateful for that education. I still love flying. I wish I could do it more, but it's so damn expensive now. So,
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
um, but yeah, I hope that answers your question there.
it does. And kind of a follow up. Do you find that that's kind of a common problem? And you don't have to speak about specific
Yeah.
coworkers or anything. As far as the blindly air traffic.
So
So that's all you've done and that's all you know. Do you find that that's kind of a more common problem in that profession?
I
Uh,
think it's bound to happen, right? Because especially on the FAA side of things, we need to hire people. We need to go out and get people. And obviously, these are my opinions. I'm not speaking for the agency.
Absolutely.
Um, but in my purview, you're going to have probably a higher amount of people that don't have aviation backgrounds that are just doing it for the first time versus people that come from a flight background or going to a CTI school for air traffic. And that's just the nature of the beast. So we try to help our coworkers out. I usually get regularly called because I have an IR instrument rating. So let's say, hey, um, does this make sense to you on the approach plate? Or how would you explain this to the pilot what you want them to do? Where do you want them to intersect on a specific arc, let's say for a view or approach or something?
Hmm.
Um, so I'll help out with that. I'll even answer pilot questions if they have something that comes up air traffic related that they're like, hey, confused why you gave me this as an approach clearance. Can you explain a little bit more? And I'll answer on the phone. Yeah, by and large, we help each other out. It does help. Trust me.
Yeah.
Um, so you understand the amount of time it takes for the pilot to receive the information, disseminate it, and act upon it, right? And so a person that doesn't have this kind of background doesn't understand that. So as soon as they say it, they expect it to just happen, and it's not always the case, especially in flight training. You got to expect some sort of latency.
Okay.
Sure. I guess that does bring up a question then, because it strikes me when if you go and you listen to air traffic control, real world, you put on live ATC. Uh, Obviously, it's rapid fire.
Yeah.
In a lot of locations. The space is busy, etc. And I would assume that the vast majority of pilots who are puttering along in their 172 are not as quick and comfortable. I imagine there's some real challenges for controllers to try to help those people, work with those people, and keep everyone safe at the same time. I don't know what your experience has been like in that respect.
Yeah. So it's a difficult position, right? Because you have a job to do. You're managing anywhere between 5 airplanes all the way up to 20. It depends on the facility that you're working at. Could be more, could be less. You could have sectorization where you have other people working positions that lead up to your position. But by and large, I mean, you just gotta kind of deal with it. Like you understand. So somebody had this conversation with me recently, and Felix, you can vouch on this, or you will be able to vouch on this pretty soon because I think you're pursuing your flight stuff
Yeah.
here pretty soon.
Yes. Hmm.
You will be able to see it. It's crazy how much Vatsim mimics what we do in real world, and the quality variance, like from the professionals, the guys that do it on a daily, that fly for the airlines, to the private pilots, the people that don't fly as often, or maybe just starting to get instruction. There is a lot of that. So as a controller, you just have to be um, able to kind of adapt to the situation, right? So I take pride in helping people out. Like I love that side of it. So if there's confusion, if there's questions, I tell pilots, like, if it doesn't make sense, ask, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you. In busier airspaces, it's a little bit tougher because, not only you're imagining speeds and altitudes and base turns and turns for intercept, but then you have to maybe potentially hold somebody's hand as maybe it's their second time going through a class Bravo or something like that. It requires a little bit more hand holding, and it just is what it is. You just have to deal with it. But we try to be as pleasant and happy and supportive as possible. It may be frustrating in the background, but by and large, we realize we have a job to do, and we're going to do the best we can to help you. So, I mean, that's how I look at it: is am I providing a good service? That's the aim for the agency. We view pilots as customers, so we're trying to get you what you want within reason, and if we can't, we'll let you know why. But yeah, that's kind of how most controllers' mindsets are. Is we're here to help you and get you through any potential situation.
Yeah, because I mean, safety is obviously the big
Yes,
one,
absolutely.
and
Yep.
that's a challenge.
It's
I
actually
sort of
part of the 65. Our rules set for air traffic is safe and expeditious flow of traffic.
yeah, I sort of have a theory from the little bit of work that I've been trying to do, just using online services and doing some online, sim training stuff. Is a lot of ways I find um, uh, VFR flight more challenging from a comms perspective. It seems counterintuitive. You think, well, geez, I can just get up and go do whatever, but that's part of the challenge. If you got a filed flight plan and you're being tracked with ATC from start to finish, in some ways it's relatively simple, putting aside maybe some complex changes in your flight plan. And so that's one of the challenges that I have found is that I gotta grab a binder here and say remind myself how do I tell so and so at Class C airport that I'm VFR and I want to go northbound.
Here's something that people forget about is you try to explain it in the phraseology that you're probably used to. But beyond that, after that initial call, you can go into plain language. Hey, this is what I want to do. And then we can break it down in plain language then. At that point, okay, we're here to assist you. So you want to go from this airport to this airport, transit this airspace. Okay, here's a transponder code. We'll radar identify you, give a position check, an altitude check, and then we're going to have you fly headings, or you can go direct, or give you an altitude restriction, whatever's necessary to get you where you need to go. So that is something I think a lot of pilots are afraid of. Is like, how do I speak ATCEs, to explain to you what I want to do? And that's at some point you just got to break it down into plain English. This is what I want to do, and
I
it's okay to do that.
I just had that in oh my gosh, I was Houston. I was doing
Okay.
my Dulles knows I did Qantas 7 and 8, and when I was
Okay.
coming in, the guy was like had mic fright, and he literally, and this was on Vatsim obviously, and the guy had mic fright, and he actually just straight up disconnected because he had a problem. And I think that's we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think that's a real thing. I was fortunate when I got on Vatsim that I had somebody that had experience it. We did a group flight, so he was like, "Hey, we're going to park next to the same gates. I'm going to basically coach you through what to say." And so, because the mic fright's real, and I think people, even though we'll never, 99 times out of 100, we're never going to see the person's face. I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it. And I'm just here to tell you that after, I don't know, 2,000 or whatever, how many hours I have on Vatsim, which I waited too long to get into it. But I really enjoy it. And the mic fright thing, once you do it a couple times, you really get over it. And yes, you're going to stumble, and I don't even use the proper phrase like correction, blah, blah, blah. I just say, excuse me, I
Mhm.
meant such and such. But, I think it's like you said, once you get into a rhythm, once you get into a flow, it really becomes second nature to the point where you're absolutely right. And I think the biggest thing for me, and I think this is, you said this, and I think Sheet also says this, never be afraid to ask for something. Never be
100%.
afraid. Never be afraid
100%.
to ask for something.
All right.
If you do not know, or you saying hey, or you want to fly this kind of approach, ask. The worst thing they're going to tell you is if you want to fly an RMP, if you want to
Mhm.
fly a RMP AR, just ask for it. If they say no, okay, whatever. Just load the ILS in like everybody else and do it. Guaranteed, that's not going to happen. Guaranteed, they're going to give it to you. But or if you need an explanation as to why, hey, why am I doing this? What's happening here? You know anyway, so just kind of a
I,
little story, but
I come to the flip of that, which is also you can say no.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
That's
yes,
a big one
Unable.
yes,
Yeah.
because I think
unable.
there's an assumption that I have to do whatever I'm directed to do, and both in the sim and in real life, if it's not safe or you can't actually comply, you really need to tell someone you can't do it for
Pilot in
whatever
command has
reason there might
responsibility
be.
for the safety and operation of that flight, and that's
Yeah,
written in the FARs. So yeah, and we're a team, right? I think a lot of people think the air traffic side is very adversarial to the pilot side. We're trying to slow them down all the time. No, that is not the case. That's not us. We're here to work with you. So I'll give you a prime example. So working weather situations. Um, there's going to be times where you're going to have to work together to figure out, okay, this is what I've got on my radar. This is what I see for weather. Can you accept a 350 heading? Affirmative or negative. Actually, we were seeing another cell that's developing would like to take more like a 270, and you just work around it. Um, and it's best to kind of lay out a game plan, especially in those situations, to pilots, so they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Like, hey, I'm giving you this heading so that it keeps you out of the worst part of the weather. And pilots are more willing to take that versus just fly heading or turn left heading. Um, so we are team players, right? We all have to work together from the pilot side and the controller side. So yeah, if you genuinely like, hey, I've never shot an RNAV approach, I don't know how to do that, I'd prefer an ILS. You can ask for that, and we're going to have to accommodate. Like we're going to do what at the end of the day, what works with our flow, but also helps you to be successful with your outcome, right? For your specific mission. So yeah, it's easy to get in that mode, like you said, IAD, which is basically I got to do whatever ATC tells me. But I'd rather you say unable than get caught in the middle of it thinking you can do it, finding out you can't, and now we got to completely resequence everybody else because of said errors. So
so what's up with NorCal then? That was a joke.
But what about NorCal?
That was a joke. That was a joke. Lufthansa and NorCal
I
need to have
strongly
a
encourage you to go around.
yeah. Lufthansa and NorCal
Oh man.
or United, they all need to have a little confab, especially
Uh,
Lufthansa regarding their whole we don't fly we don't do visuals at night. And I'm just like everybody else does, or they're lying and they're just accepting it and they're getting sequenced.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Airlines have their own things, whether
Sure.
it's RVR requirements, maybe altitude requirements, maybe it's the flight crew, maybe they're not as experienced first time going in. There could be so many variables that we don't know, and so as controllers, you just kind of learn to have to roll with it. It's not worth getting all worked up and like, oh man, now another pilot that can't do something. You just
Yeah.
you just roll with it. You
Sure.
know.
Yeah, I think when you listen to some of those recordings, one of the sticking points that I seem to come across is, we have to be stable and configured at a certain point, and what you're asking is just not possible based on
Yeah,
these
yeah,
circumstances. And it does seem like conflicts arise perhaps unnecessarily, but I also suspect that in some of those locations the tension is just ratcheted up a
Sure.
couple of extra notches for whatever reason, and
Well,
something
you think
has
about it. I
gone
mean, you've
awry.
got a lot of flying metal, right? You got people
Yep.
on board, and so you've got this mix of complexity in the airspace, the pilot's abilities. You've got weather. You've got the airport configuration. All these things play into as factors for the decision making that we have to make, and we have to make it instantaneous. We don't really have a ton of time to really kind of sit and ponder stuff. We can't hit pause. Yeah, it can get testy. You hear it on live ATC or you hear it on Vast Aviation all the time, where there's interactions and pilots and controllers butt heads. Honestly, it's a minority thing. Like
Right.
it by and large, everybody is there to help each other and work with each other for the most successful and safe outcome.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're
So,
talking about a few recordings of a few minutes
but those catch
across a
fire, don't they? I mean, it
well,
just blows up all over social media. So,
sure, but we're
yeah,
talking about a few recordings for a few minutes over a system that's running 24/7, 365 with couldn't even guess how many controlled positions there are.
sure. Yeah, so we're
So,
talking maybe what, less than 1%,
oh, far
Yeah.
less than 1%. It's
I think
probably
I
Yeah.
think I think it's not even
0.001.
around.
It
I
is
don't.
entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you could take a look at the video hits on them. Man, it's
Yeah,
just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So you're no stranger to Vatsim as well.
Correct.
I understand you have a long history there.
Too long.
I want to tell us a little bit about that journey through Vatsim.
8.5 CID. So just to give you an idea how old I am.
Yeah. Man.
I had an 8.2 at one point, but I lost my password, and Vatsim, in their infinite wisdom, they just reset it. So I'm like, no, I lost that very special number. It was 8.2, man. It was incredible. So yeah, Felix and I were talking about this past week, and so I got in after the whole Satco Vatsim kind of mashing heads, and
Yeah.
it was right around 2002 is kind of when I got my start, late 2002. I got into the flight side of things first. I had started before then using like FS centers, if you guys remember that, or East Sky World. I mean, that's going to bring back a lot of memories. If you guys remember any of those,
I
or FS
I don't,
Towers.
but
FS Towers was another one. That was another startup prior to VATSIM. But again, what got me into the hobby was doing that flight to DC in real life.
right.
My parents went out and got me as a birthday gift. It was FS 95. That was my first flight sim. And before then, I had experience, playing on the Apple IIe back in school, and that had, was it Novalogic? Was that the original creator? I'm trying to remember. Or was it with the
I
original
couldn't tell
flight
you. I
Couldn't
know
sim?
tell you,
know the
but I have
I
logic.
used an
feel
Apple
so freaking
IIe.
old
I can
right
tell
now
you that
talking to
much.
you guys about this, but
Right.
but that was my official first experience. And I remember you started off at Miggs, and it was the pixelated version of the Sears Tower and the John Hancock
Yes.
on the side.
Yep.
That's kind of where I got my start. So FS 95 was officially when I got into the hobby, and then FS 98 was really when I got into it pretty hardcore. So, but yeah, so 2002. And then '03 is when I got started. I started off at Chicago Center because I'm born and raised in Chicago. That was where I'm from originally. So I started Chicago Center, moved over to Minneapolis right around 2007. There was a big changing of heads and management. I didn't really care for it, so I moved over to Minneapolis with a bunch of buddies. So I've been home rostered since about 2006, 2007 there.
Man.
I visit at Boston and Chicago as well. I went back eventually just for visiting rights. You know, it's my hometown. But yeah, I've been going for quite a while. I did take about a year break in between. I got married, and we ended up building a house and had a kid. So that kind of took precedence at that point in time. So it kind of
Sure.
worked out, you know, just taking a little bit of time away from the hobby. But by and large, I've been pretty much on board with the Vatsim side of things. I did Pilot Edge. You know, actually, I controlled with Keith.
Oh,
Um,
did you? Oh,
yes, back in LA Center, way back in the day. I think I was only like ground or tower certified at the time, but he ended up sending a bunch of people that he liked, you know, invites to join and to be a part. So I got in on the introductory rate way back then when he got his start. And then I came back recently just to try it out. I tried the Oshkosh event. That was a blast, absolute
it was
blast.
fun.
Had
I
so
did
much fun
that
with
one
that.
too
But yeah, in
last
terms of the
summer.
flight sim community, I've been shoot since 2000s, man. It's crazy.
So on the VATSIM side, then I guess one of the questions I have for you
Sure.
is, it's been a long evolution. There's been a lot of changes. Do you see it as something that's really been improving for, the better? Has it gone backwards, forwards? I mean, what's your sort of impression of its sequence in time?
So, it's a very loaded question.
And
There's a
we
lot
don't
of
offer anything here but
there's
loaded questions, just to be clear.
let's just get down to the hot topics.
Sure,
But honestly, it's cyclical. I've been in since 2000. I see it. There's times where pilot quality is great and times where it goes straight back down. And it almost seems to happen with the induction of a new simulator, right? This
sure.
Makes
time around,
sense.
it happened to be FS 2020. I mean, that brought in a huge amount of people that weren't a part of the hobby or brought them back to the hobby.
Yes.
And so you have to have some sort of expectation that there's going to be a lot of learning. There's going to be a lot of hand holding.
Sure.
Has it gotten worse? There can be arguments made. You know, I think the air traffic side on VATSIM is much more stringent than the pilot side, and I know that's been the crux of a lot of arguments is why aren't we asking pilots to do more and train more so that they're more qualified or more understanding of the way the system works and how to work within it and how to be a good user. But you know, VATSIM doesn't want to shy away and turn away people because we want as many people as possible playing this
Sure.
hobby
Sure.
because we should be embracing it, right? We should embrace everybody, their ambition to want to be, whether it be on the air traffic side of things or flying side of things. We want people to join our hobby. We don't want it to turn into FSX and P3D days where, you know, people started leaving the hobby. There was no excitement anymore. A lot of the add-ons, major add-ons, were going up in price because they could sense that the hobby was dying. So we should embrace this. We should embrace the influx of people, but be willing to work with them, to train them, to work with them, to show them how all this stuff works. I was fortunate enough to have really good friends that were already a part of these communities that guided me. They almost took me under their wing to show me how it all worked so that I could be a good user. And I'm hoping to pay it back. That's the reason why I stay on VATSIM, is not only to challenge myself and work facilities that, you know, in the future I would love to work at, you know, it'd be really cool, but not in the cards right now. But honestly, I mean, it's a way for me to kind of pay forward what Vatsim has done for me, which is got me interested in my career path, right? Getting into whether it's the flying side of things or the air traffic side of things. I would have known nothing about it had I not joined Vatsim or taken that flight to DC for that matter. So,
Well,
yeah.
first of all, I appreciate that a flight to DC really influenced you. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah,
I took one of those trips as well, except I was in high school, and I thought I knew I wanted to come out here for school, and
sure.
I did. I would not personally have selected North Dakota the way you did, no matter what program it was,
Sure.
but that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's windy and cold. Windy and cold.
I kid, but it is probably one of our more brutal places around the
Yeah.
country to live. But as I look at VATSIM, and my own experience, I haven't been doing this terribly long, so it's a newer experience. Uh, One of the things I noticed for myself was that my airmanship what wasn't as good as I thought it should be to really be effective and enjoy the hobby more. Yes, I could program an FMC until I dropped or a McDo, no problem. I could make the plane do that, but I didn't know a lot of the basics. And I did do some training, and I did get the PPL for Vatsim for whatever that is worth. And it strikes me as I look at what's happening now in Vatsim is we've got a couple of different things that are sort of maybe system stressors. And I'm sort of curious your thoughts on. One is I think to the extent we have people who really focus on airliners, and let's face it, most of the traffic on Vatsim is airliners. I'm not always sure that that's a good thing in the sense that it's somewhat narrow, but then also these planes are complex, and
Yeah.
so you end up with pilots who are struggling to manage the plane where they might be just fine in a 172 or something. So I'm sort of curious as to your thoughts on the mix of traffic in VATSIM and maybe whether there's a way to, I don't know, make it more egalitarian. Is the phrase that comes to
So
mind.
I'm going to plug something Boston Center does because I think they do an excellent job with it. Wings over New England.
Yes.
If you haven't done it, get
Agreed.
on there and do it. It is an amazing program. They take you from start to finish, VFR operations all the way to more complex IFR operations, and it's incredible. They do such a great job. They put so much effort into it. On the controlling side of things, we have our expectations. It's a whole list of things that we look for on these particular flights, but it's all easily digestible. It's go at your own pace. And if you make mistakes, it's okay. You just redo the flight. Like there's no penalty. It's not like, oh man, IAD is a terrible pilot because he
He's
keeps
out.
redoing lesson 4. Like
Right.
we don't look at it
And
that way. It's an opportunity for you to learn. The controllers also learn about procedures and the way to handle these flights. So you're almost kind of bona fide instructors, kind of watching on as you guys complete them. But yeah, it sounds like a big plug because it probably is. But I would say Wings over New England is incredible, and I think that would be a great first step for a lot of these people. But I agree with you. Everybody wants the flashy job. Everyone wants to get APL, right? Version 2. They want to load up in their favorite
Sure.
aircraft and fly around and pretend like you're flying for the airlines, and that's just what it is. That's the appeal to this aviation career, especially now with the airlines hiring, and I think we're kind of coming down from that now.
yeah, looks like
um
I've seen a lot of articles lately. It looks like there's a slowdown that's coming.
yes,
So
but it's really interesting to see, and I kind of I'm with you, ID. I wish more people would embrace VFR because it's so liberating. Once you figure out the nuances, how it all works, it's so much fun. It is absolutely so much fun. Exploring the different sites, being able to kind of tour certain areas, certain facilities. Like you look at ZLA, that's a great example. They
Yeah.
actually have infrastructure to get you through the Bravo airspace with
Yeah. The flyways.
limited kind of
that's right.
difficulty. Yeah, like it's fun.
Corridors, the shoreline
Yeah,
route.
yeah.
Yeah.
I One of my
Hmm.
favorite is the coastal route. I love
Yeah.
taking that from Burbank going to Avalon or something like that. It's just incredible. I absolutely love it. So
I have to say, for the VFR side, I found myself using Pilot Edge.
sure,
Got that. It was a gift. I want to be
yeah,
clear. Got it as a
absolutely.
gift for a year subscription, and I enjoy it on that side. But I will say that occasionally we catch somebody on VATSIM who's flying around VFR or maybe flying a helicopter. We see that from time to time too. And I always think it's refreshing, if a tad bit surprising. I sometimes think
Yes.
the controllers are just as surprised as I am
Yeah,
on
like
some days.
for a little bit there, just to help out with some of the Boston trainees, I would take up a medevac helicopter and go between the heliports.
Yep.
Just to give them that experience of like, hey, how do I give them transition through the Bravo? Okay, report landing assured, that type of stuff, and it's cool. So that side of it's really cool, especially with FS 2020, just being able to see the visuals and be able to
Yes.
correlate these places. It's
Right.
incredible. It's insane. I never so this was probably the wildest dream I ever had was, hey, why aren't these streaming Google Maps to Flight Sim? Like that was the kind of the aha moment. I'm like, they need to do this, and Microsoft's done it essentially. Like it's just
Yeah.
They
insane.
have.
So I look forward to more of that. This has brought a lot of excitement to the hobby, and it's great seeing things really take off from where my humble start, with back in the 2000s to see where it is now is just incredible.
I will say that I thoroughly enjoy hearing helicopters. I hear because
Yeah.
I know DJ get mad because like, oh, my immersion. I don't care, DJ. This is a friend of ours, but he likes to kid around. But anyway, as far as that, I love it for the immersion's sake. When I hear a November call sign, I'm like, yes, I want to hear November. I want to hear more November call sign or .com.
Sure.
Please
Yeah.
.com
Yeah.
star check. I want to hear all these things. I want to hear 135 operators. To hear Southwest and American United Frontier Flight, it gets a little old. And I will say that I was never a GA person, never. But since the new sim and some of the add-ons they've had, the 414, some of the biz jets that they've got now, and some of the like the Black Square offerings, turboprops. I'm a big fan of Raul's M500. I think that's a
He's
fantastic.
incredible.
I
He
think
is
that's a
incredible. Yeah.
fantastic aircraft, and it's really fun to putt around. And I'm with you. I don't do a VFR, but I probably get into it now. Obviously, I'm going to start doing the real world stuff, hopefully. But I really think that, like you guys said, I think that people should embrace it more. And I think, especially coming into 2024, we have these, looks like we're going to have missions, stuff like that. I don't know if there's going to be Vatsim integration, but maybe you could do the mission while you're on the client.
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
know how that could play out, but um, I think there's going to be a lot more to offer, and I really I think the future's bright, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I was in P3D, I was in FSX. The hobby was dead.
Hmm.
I mean, it was in a slow decay. I know, Dulles, that you kind of joined with 2020, and then
Yeah.
you discovered P3D, you discovered X Plane because of the lack of kind of like the aircraft you wanted to fly. But before, man, we had P3, we had X Plane. That's it, and
Yeah.
it was the same add-ons we had for 10 years previous. And so it was really stale. The graphics, I mean, you were looking at AAA titles at the time, and then you were looking at P3D, and like, what the why are we doing it? Even back then you were like you're like, why are we even doing this? And but now the sky's the limit. But I want to ask one question. This is going to
Yeah.
be
Sure.
very contentious. It has nothing to do with your career, but what are your thoughts on top down controlling as a single controller in a place such as ZLA, ZAU, or ZBW?
Yeah. So this is a hot topic on
Yes.
local discords, all the facilities. It's tough, especially you go somewhere like ZLA. There are some really great gifted controllers out there, but man, your heart goes out to them because as soon as you sign on, here's at least 50 or 60 airplanes that would just load up. And to be able to handle that from a center standpoint and have to deal with reroutes, have to do um, if there's weather, okay, reroutes for that, so swap routes. Then you have to deal with sequencing for all these arrivals into these specific airports. So like ZLA is a great example. You've got Los Angeles, you've got San Diego, you've got Vegas, you've got Burbank, you've got all these regional airports too that are serviced by airliners too,
Sure.
and you got to be able to sequence. And it's like my airspace is only big enough, right? I only have enough time and enough breath to be able to get out certain transmissions. Like you have to be very selective. So, um, I've heard because I have friends that control at ZLA on Vatsim. I think there's a push, there's a movement at least to get more of the lower facility staff first before staffing
Yes. Oh
center.
my gosh.
I think it's a good
Please.
idea. I think
Please.
it's a good place to start because it's a disservice, right, to the pilots
Yes,
that
it
want
is.
this. They want to be a part of the back and forth, the tit for tat. They want to be sequenced in a conga line going from San Diego to Vegas. Like that's what they want. So it's really tough to be able like, hey, sorry, this is an indefinite delay. I don't have enough time to issue clearances right now because I'm sequencing center traffic. And the responsibility should be there, right? The people that are on the ground that aren't moving are the least priority, right? Versus people that are in the air that need to be sequenced. That's just the name of the game. That's what we do.
Sure.
Um, So and that's kind of where you fall into the pitfall of online ATC options, right? Because you're limited by the time of day, the people that are able to volunteer time and get on there and control. People have lives. Maybe I can only put in an hour or two, then I got to go. It just is what it is. That's where you see the benefit of doing something like Pilot Edge, where it's guaranteed time within a certain period of time. So
Yeah.
they're always up. But if they get busy, you could definitely see they get task saturated because they're kind of doing what we do on Vatsim, except you've got one person that's focused on all the towers, one person that's focused on all the Tracon stuff, one on center. So only 3 controllers, but it's easy to get overwhelmed, right? Um, so yeah, there are discussions going on. I don't know specifically at higher levels. It seems like it's more facility initiated right now. It seems like it's pretty organic where most facilities are like, hey, I need an approach in the tower if you want me on center, just to help
Sure.
diffuse some of that traffic.
Yeah.
So I think Boston does a really good job. I think they're very emblematic of a good solution because there's so many trainees that are certified just on tower only or just on approach only that we can afford to be like, hey, you guys want to hop on for a bit? Yeah, let's do it. And now you got tower Tracon, then I can take center, and it makes life a lot easier. But yeah, it can be contentious because we want to be able to handle every single airplane that's out there and handle all your requests and stuff like that. But there's a breaking point, right? Like
Yes.
we need to split this off. We have to do something. We have to get another controller on, and that's when you start sending pings on Discord, like, "Hey, we need an approach. We need a tower," and then people start hopping on. So
Or you
Now,
hope people are hopping on,
yeah.
right? And isn't
yes,
that
yes, you hope. Fingers
because I
crossed.
think you
Otherwise,
identified,
yeah,
certainly from a pilot
yeah,
perspective, you've identified one of my bigger challenges sometimes with VATSIM is that um, it's there's nobody on. That's a common one. Okay, fine. Or there's just a random spot on somewhere in between, or I've had I remember once I landed at Dulles and I got a contact me, and I had no idea Dulles Ground was on, but they were like the only person who had been on the entire flight. And I probably said 2 words, and then we were done. But at least they were there, and I think we see this all the time. How do we get sort of with the number of new people who have come on to try to fly? How do you get more coverage? And it strikes me it's a big challenge. Obviously, events are a big way to draw
oh
people.
yeah, yep.
Felix and I were talking about the infamous Cross the Pond. And I said,
No
well,
more.
I said to him, I said, listen,
I'm done.
we're doing a podcast about all things
Oh
flight
man,
sim. At least one of us should do Cross the Pond so
Yeah,
we can get Cross
you.
the
It's
Pond.
you.
I know it's going to be
You've
me. But
voluntold.
right, but one of
yeah.
the things I genuinely like about Cross the Pond, even though it's mayhem and all of these other things, is that well, at least there's coverage.
Yes. And you get
It
that anxiety, that adrenaline rush to it too. That's like my favorite part. I'm an adrenaline junkie when it comes to this type of stuff. I like busy traffic. I like events, working them particularly. Um, but like it's that anxiety, that rush. Like I have to be on point. I have to have all my charts. I have to have my clearance down. I have to know what I'm doing, my taxi route. Like it forces you to kind of emulate being an actual pilot or an actual controller because you
sure.
have to be on point. It's incredible. I love that rush. It's so much fun.
My chief issue, and we'll talk about this, is why do we not have CPDLC yet, and why do we not have and why are we treating Oceanic like it's a normal FIR, like
Well, it
VHF?
almost is now.
No, it is, but my and that's not more a question. It's kind of rhetorical, but it's more so that like that's my thing. Is it's
Mhm.
just kind of the immersion part, and the NatTrack website always goes down. Every CTP I've gotten lucky. I'm like the last 100th person to get it, or 10th person from the last, and then it's like, oh, it's canceled. So now you guys have to do this like some really crazy way that we didn't plan for. Even though
Sure.
every year the system goes down, and I do agree with you that there is something cool about being lined up. And I did this when I did CTP East 22. I was in a BBJ, first time Microsoft, and I was in a conga line of 30 jets waiting to leave Dulles runway 30. and that's cool. That
It
is
is so cool.
that is
It is
cool when
so
you're
cool.
lining up and you're watching
Yep.
them and they're all going out
Letting them
and you're
rip.
seeing them and that's cool. That's cool part. But there's some aspects of it that aren't. Now, as far as coverage goes, we talk about it. Do you think that there's a solution in training? Because I've heard a lot of people that there's varying, like Boston, there's a lot of centers that are high priority. But the training line is really long. There's not enough people to train. Like, what are kind of your thoughts on that piece of it? Should VATSIM or VAT USA or whoever or both or all, all the above, should they really standardize the training times and the training procedures just across the board? Um,
It's kind of a difficult to ask because every
there,
facility is a little bit different, right? If it was the same everywhere, I think you can get away with something like that. But so many facilities, like you compare LA to Boston to Chicago to Minneapolis to Memphis, you have varying levels of what are considered your top airports, your majors as they call them. They used to call them majors and minors, but now they've kind of reduced it down. It used to be you could have a certain amount of majors, a certain amount of minors, and then have to train through to progress to a major. They've done away with a lot of that stuff. Now I think it's just you're limited to only a certain amount of majors that you can actually train with and standardize. Um, I think this is an issue that we've had since the inception of Vatsim, though. How long is too long for training? And what it comes down to is you're completely at the mercy of volunteers.
yes.
Until it's an actual paid program, I don't see it ever being alleviated because people are like, well, I'm just a volunteer. I'm here when I can. I'll train when I can. I know at Minneapolis, they're trying creative things like doing group training sessions, but at some point you got to be able to just work one on one, and it's hard. It really is difficult. And is there the ambition for the certified people to want to train? Not everybody wants to do that too. So I think Boston does a really good job. And again, I keep harping on Boston because that's one of the facilities that I'm very familiar with from a training standpoint. I control there as well.
Mhm.
Um, so I know their programs, they do a very good job. They got quite a few instructors, so they're constantly rolling through. But I remember during COVID when I rejoined at Boston, it took a while. I think there was an upwards of 2 to 3 month waits for people because of the amount of influx of students coming in and the availability of instructors. So it took quite a while to kind of whittle that down and bring it down to kind of more normal levels, more acceptable levels. But it just is what it is. Unfortunately, they're doing the best they can with the resources they have, and they can't really force people to come on and train.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's
I
just is
think you
what it
actually
is.
raise two interesting, really interesting questions there for an operation like VATSIM, because you talk about resources,
Yep.
right? You talk about it being a paid program. I mean, obviously, one of the controversial topics is should it cost something to use VATSIM? And obviously, there are, oh gosh, you name it, a trillion different views on that. But I'm curious as to over the long history that you've been with VATSIM and kind of what it is now. Does that make sense? Even just to keep sufficient resources for servers and systems, from your perspective, or what you know about that?
I think that's why you saw Vatsim switch over to a donation method
Yeah,
because they're trying to diversify their intake of support instead of it just relying on the head honchos that are running it. So the founders that have donated the most money throughout the years, what have you. So by diversifying, you kind of open up things. I don't know. That's a really good question. I really don't know how. Uh, First of all, how much you could get away with charging for the service, how much you'd pay the potential controllers. Because I mean, that ideally, that's what you're doing, right? You think about it, kind of like you look at a good example would be hockey, right? You're always hurting, like for any sort of intramural or pickup hockey, you're always hurting for goalies, right? And so you try to incentivize it
now I know
rather
you're
than
from the Midwest. Okay, go ahead.
Blackhawks fan, man. But
Right,
you think
right.
about it, and I was a goalie, so but you think about it, you would try to entice goalies to come out and support your team by saying, "Hey, you don't have to pay any of the rental fees, so we will cover you just to get you on the ice." And so that's kind of how I view maybe a potential implementation of the system working for Vatsim. The pilots wouldn't get paid. It's more or less the controllers because they're the ones providing the main service that
Sure, yeah.
kind of drives the
The
whole
pilot's
thing.
getting paid makes no sense. The
Yeah,
pilot's
right.
paying
I
makes
mean, I'd
sense.
be happy. Please, I'm fine. I'll go
even
along all the
even a
hours.
cent a flight. I'll take a cent a flight. No,
Yeah,
I just you look at a system like what Keith has over on Pilot Edge.
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know any of the financials. I wonder how well it's working for them. Obviously, they've been running for quite a while, so it
yeah,
must be somewhat lucrative for them to be able to go. And I think a big part of that is probably corporate contracts, that
sure.
drives the engine for that. And then whatever he makes off the community is what he makes. But yeah, it's a really good question. I wonder, if Vatsim could maybe muse the idea of approaching flight schools, because this is something I try to bring up in my alma mater. You've got the sims already. You're running FSX or X-Plane. Why don't we hook this up to Vatsim? They could provide the ATC and be around, and that could maybe be a pipeline for them to receive revenue and be able to support a system like this. But I really don't know how much you pay people, you know, it- and
I,
it all depends on how much money you can bring in too. So
so
yeah.
one of the things that strikes me on that. So let if we put Pilot Edge in one category here, right? So I don't think even if we had a paid model in VATSIM, I don't think it's going to be the Pilot Edge model,
Hmm.
in the sense
It
that
could be.
Pilot Edge is a heavy focus on sort of real world pilots who are using it to work on their
Procedures,
comms and their
policies.
procedures,
Yeah. Hmm.
and there is a strong expectation that comes with your um, with your subscription, that it's going to be, I hate to say it this way, a joker free environment.
Sure. Yeah.
There's going to be people on Unicom, talking about some nonsense and making noise and
I
being
mean, to be
goofy.
fair, that happens in the real world too.
Yeah, it does.
Well,
It does.
fine,
If you
I
ever
just want
live,
to
fine,
so
say,
we're required to monitor 21.5. So I hear all the
oh, really?
shenanigans.
fine. That's fine. That's fine. But let us, but in terms of, VATSIM does have a bit of that reputation. Some of it, whether it's fair or not, it's there, and I don't think that model's the same. Where I was thinking about more in the Pilot Edge, in the VATSIM scenario, is just I don't, from a resources perspective, in terms of having money to put into software development, systems development, training programs, right? Even if you're not literally paying a trainer, if you've got training materials, training videos, training whatever's, that they could put out to bring more controllers on, to help more with pilots. If you look at really the training materials they have, it's virtually none. And when you talk to somebody, like a Tim Barber, I think he'd love to have more money to do any of
Oh
these
yeah,
things, but he
absolutely.
doesn't.
Hmm.
And so how do you bridge that gap? And it's tough because,
Yeah.
well, one of the things that makes VATSIM special is that it doesn't cost you money.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yep.
I don't know how you reconcile that at some point.
I
So
mean,
some
I would.
facilities have moved towards like having online courses, kind of like what you're saying, IAD, where
Yeah.
it's kind of self-led, and then once you hit a certain module, then you go on and you do a lesson on whether it be Sweatbox is what we call their like the test server, where we can load up scenarios and run the trainees through the ringer. Um, I don't. I see a lot of people kind of moving away from that type of system because it's a lot of work. Like you have to design the modules, you have to create a certain amount of material. It's got to coincide with what the GRP calls for. Um, you know, it it's just a lot of work to take in for a volunteer hobby. So now, to your point, if we add the financial aspect of it, maybe it makes it more enticing for people to kind of pursue that and create more structure, like you're saying. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely fun to muse about, though. The
Sure.
idea that it could be a pay for service, and that would definitely entice people to want to hop on and control. Is like, hey, I'm getting a few bucks off this. Why not? It's fun for me. I really enjoy it, and might as well make a few bucks on the side.
I've
Yeah.
certainly thought about controlling Vatsim.
Do
My
it.
big,
Do it.
I mean,
Yeah.
you say that, but my biggest thing is the time, like the waiting.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, if there
Hmm.
was an incentive, my wife would get off my back about like, why are you doing this hobby? I love my wife, but because she may see this, so I love you. But no, it's if I was making a few bucks, I could justify being here.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
my
absolutely.
more my point is that I personally, as a user, as a newer user, by the way, I was simmed for a long time, and then 2022 December, my friend who I told you about did the group flight, and I've been hooked. I have
That's
kicked
so
myself
much
in the
fun.
butt every
Hmm.
every single day since I discovered Vatsim, because I was like, why did I wait so long? This is
It's
fantastic. This is
such an
amazing.
incredible
This
experience. Like, it's
this is a
another level to the whole
yeah.
thing, right?
It really is, and I know people are like, "Oh," and I know we've talked about Beyond ATC. I had Pro ATCX. Screw that. I didn't even reinstall it when I got my new PC. I was like,
Sure,
"This is worthless." I would
sure.
rather fly on Unicom. I know you. It's okay. It's okay. We can't all be perfect. All right.
No, I think there is a place for we have stuff coming now beyond ATC, say intentions.ai. I think there's a place for all of those too. And one place that it really works is, of course, if you fly a lot in some place that there really isn't any coverage, and you want to have the experience, or you want to train as a pilot yourself to be better at saying, and understanding what's going to happen and going through these sequences, and those really the promise of a product like those is making you a better pilot when you want to get on to VATSIM and be in a big group, or so you're more prepared when Heathrow director starts yelling at you. Trust me, they will.
What are you doing?
Right.
EC2 Papa Golf. What are you doing?
Yes, my my LNAV has me going to Luton now, so excuse me. But I do think there's a place for those
Sure.
systems, and I do think that this is as the universe of community participants has increased. There are people who are going to fill all sorts of different niches here. I mean, VATSIM, in terms of the total universe of people who are flying, uh, most of them are not flying on VATSIM
Yeah.
as a general percentage. But if it helps someone as a segue to doing it with live
Sure.
controllers and vice versa, I
So
think
I
that's all
look at
good.
it. This would be so cool for Vatsim to look into. And if you're listening, Vatsim people, listen. If there's a way to integrate something like
Yes.
Beyond ATC, so you're seamlessly going from the AI aspect to here's Memphis Center's online, so I get a chance to talk to him. All right, Unicom, you're back over to the AI assisted ATC. I don't know if that's possible, but honestly, it would be incredible for
You would
that to.
probably have to pay for it at that point. My personal
Right.
opinion
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
would definitely, at that point, now we're definitely having a paid model,
Sure.
because either you're integrating that product with what you have, or you're saying, hey, we have a bridge, and somehow that's got to be, either you're paying for Beyond, or say
And
intention.
maybe that could be the gateway in, right? So
Mhm.
you team up with Beyond as a subscription, but you can link it up to your Vatsim account, which is
Sure.
free. And
Yeah.
then
Right.
you would just transition to these zones of control
I would be
versus
fine with that,
AI.
honestly.
Yeah.
Like, that would be
Yeah.
nice.
It'd
I
be
will
really
say,
cool.
just to continue on a flight so that there's continuity.
Right.
I suspect
Correct.
that would be a very big lift
Yeah,
right
it would
now
be.
for where
It would
Beyond
be.
ATC is
Yeah.
currently. I'll
Hmm.
note it is not a subscription model,
No,
so
it's
that's one
not.
thing.
Yeah.
But
Flying.
there is a streamer who actually tried to do who's a beta tester for the product, who tried to do a little combo flight, or was suggesting that as an idea. So I think you're on that, Hawks, in terms of a potential avenue. And again, just as a concept, if VATSIM, for example, and Beyond ATC or something like it were integrated together, maybe you pay a one-time fee to have, or maybe even a little subscription to have that combination. So you say, well, if you want to be on VATSIM, that's fine, but if you also want to have this integrated model, you know, pay $30 and you can have that. And if you want it to be souped up, you can pay a little more. And then, maybe VATSIM gets a few bucks, Beyond ATC gets a few bucks, and everybody's enjoying this much more broad-based model. That's how I could sort of see it
Sure.
Yeah,
working together, if
absolutely.
if such a thing is
Yeah.
possible,
I think,
because that's the
I think at the end of the day, these groups, so Say Intentions is already rolling right now, as far as I
Yes, they
know.
are.
But for Beyond, I'd like to see how they just roll out their model, see how it goes, see where the pitfalls are, see where the areas of improvement could be made, and just kind of see how it goes. But then, 2 years down the road, maybe you look at this as an avenue, just like you're saying. Maybe this is a structure they can consider for Vatsim if you want to do this to kind of stretch your legs into another pool. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And yeah, no, it's again. I got to tell you guys, like watching your podcast, I love you guys. Fantastic. I love the
Thank you.
show.
I thank
You
you.
guys are
Thank you.
fantastic. I think this is the most excited I've ever been by this hobby in quite a long time. Like it is so cool to see the potential where we're going to go, whether it be AIATC, VATSIM, the aircraft that we're getting, FS 2024, X-Plane 12. It doesn't matter your tapestry. There's something for everybody, and new
Yes.
stuff is constantly coming out.
Yes.
What a time to be a simmer, right? Like
It really
it just
is.
blows my mind. It absolutely
I
does.
think it's funny. We're going to ask a question we asked way at the beginning of this podcast when we started, which is, do you think this is the golden age of flight sim?
Yes, 100%, 100%. And I hope we got more years in store, especially with the
Yeah.
commitment from Microsoft. And now that what is it called? X-Plane has the motivation to keep going, keep updating, because they have a challenge now. Instead of just meeting whatever Prepared had or X-Plane had, or FSX had, now they've got something to attain and something to work for. So, and you're seeing that with all these uh, freeware add-ons, whether it be Auto Ortho and
Sure.
third-party devs are starting to create for both now. You're starting to see a little bit more scenery kind of leak out, which is great.
Yeah.
So it's again, man, I get so giddy about this stuff. I nerd out all the time. My wife tells me to kind of stow it every once in a while because I just get so excited.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Mini FCU, I've got it. It's incredible. I really do like it.
Okay.
A couple things with it, but by and large, it's an incredible unit. I also purchased something from Core Flight Technologies, the 737 MCP. So whenever that
Ooh,
shows up,
nice.
I'm
Whoa.
excited for that.
I've seen that. I saw that on. I see.
So
I
FS
want
Weekend,
win.
they
I
had it.
want win. I want win win because I'm not paying that kind of price. But I
Sure,
want win win
yeah.
to do a Boeing at MCP, and I'm sold. As soon as it happens, I'm getting
Their
it.
stuff looks incredible.
It
It
does.
really
Does look
does.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're a man after my own heart because I got the mini FCU over here that I
Sure.
bought on the Kickstarter campaign at
Yeah.
the $99, although shipping was like $40. So there you go.
So I
And I got
invested after the fact. I ended up going after their second roll through. That's when I got it,
okay,
and I just got it about a week ago, and it's been great.
nice.
I absolutely love it.
It's a nice product,
Hmm.
and I love secondhand gear. I bought an old Flight Tech Solutions
Okay.
747 MCP
Nice.
EFIS
Nice.
combo, which is fun to have, although a little difficult to integrate into Microsoft Flight Simulator. But luckily, there's a dev who basically taught himself how to program
Okay.
just to integrate these,
Is
which is
this Moby
crazy
Flight
and it's
perchance, or
amazing. And I cannot thank him enough.
yeah? Is it
So
Moby Flight perchance that you're talking about, or is it different software
no,
that integrates?
it's just he just calls it device interface manager, and
Oh, well, easy
it's
enough.
not even a for sale product
Sure.
at the moment.
Dim.
He just developed it because
Dim.
he wanted to integrate the MCP that he had, which I think was a 737 from Flight Tech, and he has kindly helped the rest of us.
Yeah.
But he's working on 2.0. So for those of you who have such a product, go find that device interface manager.
So my goal at the end of it, if I can, I want to combine VR with the tactility of having overhead panels, the MCP, throttle quadrant, comms. I want it positioned so that I can just look in VR, reach out, and touch. That's
Nice.
my goal. That's what I want to do with my setup. So I want to have both Airbus and obviously Boeing products. So I want to have a 737 A320 cockpit. That's essentially what I'm looking to do. So, yeah, that's what I attain to do. VR is getting better and better every day. It really is.
VR and I are not going to get along that way.
Oh no,
I'm subject to
motion
it'll
sick
be
or what?
motion sickness man over
Yeah,
here for sure. But I like the tactility as well.
yeah.
It's nice to have that. Um, I'm more of a Queen of the Skies person than the
Sure.
737 or the A320, but the same idea is there, and I like equipment if you can sort of mix it up and try different things with it as well, or make it work for other planes
Right,
to
right,
the
right.
extent that you reasonably can.
I've just decided that if I ever have a liquidity event, as somebody said on my private server
Right.
the other day, a liquidity event, I'm just going to go full flight deck with
Do
the
it. Oh
747,
man.
and
Oh.
I probably will have to file for divorce.
Well, if you have a liquidity event, you know, there'll be an opportunity
Sell
for
it to
Yeah,
local
sure.
for
flight
a
schools.
similarly frivolous item for
Sell it
your
to local
wife.
flight schools. Sell them
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
You could show this as an investment to your wife. It should be
sure.
like, you know what, Felix? It has money involved. We're going to make a ton of it. Let's do it. Like,
It's funny. I actually, there's somebody in St. Pete Clearwater that has this. My wife got this for my birthday a couple years ago. It's a fixed base, but it's a full 737 cockpit,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that's what it was. It's like this guy's a passion project thing. I love flight
Mhm.
sim, but then he's like, oh, I can charge for it. So that's certainly like that's if I ever had a full cut, that's exactly what I would do. I would
Yep.
100% pay, and it would be a nominal fee. I mean, it wouldn't be like I'm not going
Yeah.
to do
No.
five
No.
bucks, but
Yep.
like it wouldn't be some. I've seen some of these things where it's like you're paying. You might as well just go get the type rating at that point for what you're gonna pay, because it's like, wow, okay,
I want to
Wow.
say there's a
sure.
place north of Chicago, and I think the going rate is about 150 an hour. I could
Oh,
be wrong
that's
on
not
That's
that.
not
bad at
bad.
That's
all.
That
not
is not
bad.
bad.
And
There's
it's
a
No.
for a
place up
737
the
sim.
road from me here that has a 737 full motion. It's X plane based, but it's full motion and
Sure.
it's full cockpit. It's quite fancy,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, for a place that's open to the public. And I think it's two something an hour.
That's not terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, considering the fidelity that you're getting with it. Do you
yeah.
know if they use 2020 or if they're using X-Plane or
Well, when I did it,
P3D?
which was almost 2 years ago, it was a nice birthday present. They were using X plane.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yep.
Yeah. Although, if we're being honest, if we're going to go for our flight sim experience, I think we all need to hop on a plane and go do the Concorde flight experience at Brooklands
Yes.
Brooklands.
Oh, that'd be
with a
incredible.
Concorde pilot.
That'd
Thank
be
you.
incredible.
Sign me if I have a liquidity event. Sign me up for that
Liquidity.
because that's
I'm gonna
one I
have to.
want to
I'm
go
gonna have to
to.
remember that. I'm gonna have to start using that. That's
Liquidity
fantastic.
event. Yeah, not mine, by the way. RKW, who we're,
Right.
we're hoping to get on the show. That was his phrase, not mine. So
Yes.
I'll give credit as credit is due. There's actually a couple of 747 simulators now that people have been able to cut cockpits out of them, which is terrible. But I
Yeah.
guess it's going for a good cause. There's one that I've been looking at that's in England. It's called
Yeah. They just opened, right?
744 Experience. They
Yeah.
I mean, I watched all the videos where they're taking the real components and they're hooking them up, to voltmeters and ammeter, ohm meters, and everything, and making sure everything is as it should be. And
And
I
Gary,
yes,
Gary, he helped
Yeah,
yeah,
them on
because
that project.
that's. I'm trying to remember. World Flight. Don't they
Yeah,
use
yeah,
it?
Simfest.
Simfest.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
World Flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Simfest.
that's
Yep.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible
Gary, by the
setup.
way, is a very nice guy who's given a lot to the community, including Vatsim, I believe. One of the
That
one of
setup is the
the
dream. I'm not even
It
gonna
is.
lie.
It is
I
so
don't.
cool. Even their
I
printer, from the donations that they get, I
uh,
I love the integration of that. It is so
there.
cool.
Well, he
Everything's
knows.
live.
They got a couple people there who actually know how to program, including him. So
Hmm.
it's quite interesting to see how they put that together. In terms of integrating new features into it, and they managed to get MSFS working and a whole bunch of other things that were not small challenges. I think, as a scenery generator for the plane, since they're running the Aerowings, PSX
Yeah. Yep.
747 in it. So, okay, so we're coming up on close to an hour and a half. So it's a little on our longer side. But let me just turn back to real world ATC for a couple of minutes.
Sure. Absolutely.
There obviously, and I know you're not speaking for the FAA or in any way, shape, or form, but there's obviously been suggestions that there's stress on the system, and there was, of course, a major modernization program that kind of never exactly came to fruition. What you know how do you see things at the moment for the system in terms of its robustness and long-term
Yeah.
prospects and changes?
So again, my personal opinion.
Right, just your personal
Yes.
opinion. We're making that very
I,
clear.
I look at things like, I'm grateful to see that the FA is re-looking at the idea of doing CTI schools, because for a while there they kind of cut that whole program out. So it's very good to kind of see that avenue reopen,
Mhm.
because a lot of kids went to college for this stuff, and um, if anything, it provided them an opportunity to kind of get their feet wet, get used to the phraseology, get used to some procedures, how to read procedures, understand them, and implement them, before having to go to Oklahoma City for training. Um, so that pathway, it's really cool to see that reopen. What I would love to see, and this is just again the FA embracing maybe Vatsim as a possible recruitment tool. It would be so cool to see them come in and see all these kids that are 13, 14, 15 that are interested in
Sure.
aviation or the air traffic side of things, and recruit and show that, hey, this is a potential career path. You seem like you're pretty good at it. You should consider, coming along. I don't know if that's in the cards, but it would be incredible to see something like that, just to invigorate the talent pool, and get people that are genuinely interested in the air traffic or aviation sector, right? Whether it be the pilot side or the controlling side, you could look at it either way. Even the airlines can kind of look at these kids that are flying around. There's some kids that are just like, man, they're quick turns, like just in and out. They're on to the next flight, and they just absolutely enjoy it. But um, that would probably be the biggest thing that I would love to see the FAA focus on, is like, how are we going to recruit people that are interested in these careers, and what are the best means to do so, because we do need replacements. I'm only going to stay a certain age for so long, and then I'm going to get up to 56, and then we're forced to retire. On the air traffic side, I could go management at that point, but I look at it as a sense of, maybe change it up, maybe go back into the flying side of things at that point. I'll be
Hmm.
young enough to do something like that. But yeah, what are we doing to bring more people into the industry? Stress comes naturally with any job you do.
Sure.
I don't feel any more stress than I did when I had just a typical 9 to 5 job. There's, if anything, I am a kind of a puzzle guy. So I love that side of air traffic. Every day is different. You've got planes that are capable of this speed, planes that are capable of this speed, and you got to figure out who's number one, number two. That's half the fun. I love thinking three-dimensionally and trying to figure out how this is all going to work, or count the miles, and you figure out what the distance from the pilot is to the airport, and then you figure out based on that what your sequence is. All that stuff. I'm a geek. I'm a geek when it comes to that type of stuff. So it doesn't really bother me too much. And then, realistically, you're getting paid for the tougher situations. Where you're dealing with incidents and accidents and stuff like that, and that's just a natural part of the job. You kind of accept it as you come in. But yeah, just looking for other potential resources to recruit new people to the industry.
So maybe we'll make this a final question unless Felix
Hmm.
has something he wants to add. So here's the question I know everyone really wants to know what happens. So, what happens after you get that phone number that you have to call?
Honestly, everybody makes a big deal out of it. Most of the time, uh, so it depends on the type of situation, right? By and large, we're instructed to issue a brasher, right? A brasher warning. So that is possible pilot deviation, suggests you call wherever you work. Um, Considering a lot of the smaller facilities don't deal with like as much just like airline traffic, they're more kind of dealing with general aviation or training type of things. I think we issue the phone number without the brasher with the intent of like having this be an educational moment where we're like, hey, this is what happened. This is what we saw. We'd love to work with you to correct this moving forward. Like, it's non punitive. We just kind of have a conversation about things. If it's a brasher type of situation where like there's a loss of separation or something to that effect, that gets escalated. So we generally stay out of that and say, hey, you're not going to get in trouble because we don't know. It goes beyond us to FSDO. So that's your flight standards district office that deal with a lot of those uh, type of inquiries. But by and large, we'll just have a general conversation, get your side of the story, explain what we saw and what we can do to remedy the situation moving forward. Uh, I've yet to run into an instance where like you're on the phone yelling at people. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not punitive. We're not cops. You know what I mean? We're not
Sure.
the police. We're not the bad guys. We're here to help, and we want to make this the safest system possible. And how do we do that? By teaching moments like this, right? Where you have the opportunity to talk directly with the pilots, with the instructor, with the trainee, or just somebody who holds a PBL or maybe they are IR that maybe had just a whether it's a temporary lapse in judgment, maybe a misunderstanding, maybe the way we said it wasn't clear enough, and then we just have a conversation about it. So, yeah, by and large, I mean, I again, it doesn't always come across as punitive, but again, once it goes, if it's a brasher thing, that goes above and beyond us. So, in terms of like what happens to the pilots, we don't really know. By and large, I think I've never dealt with it, but I've heard of people dealing with FSDO, and it's just generally conversations, and they may have you for penance go read the FARs. Um,
Well,
and
that
it's
qualifies as
yeah,
penance. Yeah.
exactly. Read 391 133s and say your
Right.
prayers, and
Right.
you're good.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it's a lot less. Like everybody kind of makes it up to be like this. Oh, you got the phone number, you're in
I
trouble.
think it's the Voss aviation thing, right? I
Yeah.
call it,
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's
right.
the Voss aviation effect or the live ATC effect of like some really
Sure.
gross deviation of this guy, bust Bravo at McCoy because he's coming out of Orlando Executive and he's yelling at the guy like I never did it, and that's what they think the phone call is. It's just
uh,
like an off the
Off
record, like,
frequency.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
off frequency, just like drill down like everybody's Arlie Ermy. But I know at least the one couple of airline pilots I've talked to, there's a union wall. All right, so like if they're ALPA or Allied or whatever, there's FAQA, right? Flight Ops Quality Assurance. That's an airline thing, and then there's the ASAP. But there's a union wall, so that's all on us. So obviously, unless they like grossly negligent, it's usually like recurrent. I think that's
we
what
have our own version of that
yeah.
too at
Mhm.
SAP. That's what we can kind of file.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting how NASA got involved with the collection of all that information too. It just seems like
I just
such an
learned
odd
something right
agency.
now. Interesting.
Yeah,
NASA.
yeah. It was so they used to call them NASA forms. You used to have to fill out the NASA form to, like as a pilot, from our side of like, oh, I did something wrong. Maybe, let me file a NASA form, and then that'll kind of not grant you immunity because that was kind of the old mindset back in the day, but at least give, like you're kind of admitting to your mistake.
Sure.
On the air traffic side, again, the NASA is kind of more the collection agency. They gather all the information, then it's deciphered or disseminated by specific groups, that kind of review the data. But yeah, like it all stemmed from just this push within the industry to put safety at the forefront, admit your mistakes, let's learn from them, let's see if we can correct some of them that are systemic. Like if it's a bigger issue than just one person making a mistake, maybe the way that instructors are briefing approach plates is incorrect. Maybe we need to look at that. Maybe it could be procedural changes at a specific airport. Maybe they're confusing the pilots. But let's take these reports and make it non-punitive and figure out what we're going to do about it. So, yeah.
So what's your phone number when you make a mistake?
8675.
555.
Right. 8675 309.
309.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
That's going to see a temporary swing of calls, I think.
Exactly. Well, Hawks, we really appreciate you
Yes,
coming
yeah.
on. It's been a
Appreciate
lot of
you guys.
fun,
Thank you
and
so much for having me. It's been a
I think
blast.
maybe we'll talk. I'll mention here that we have up on our screen, of course, FS Expo. We're a media partner with them for this year,
Yes.
and we'll have a little link down below where you can register. And just be clear, we don't get any remuneration for that. And if you enjoyed the podcast and Hawks in particular, please give us a thumbs up or subscribe. And Hawks, if maybe you're going to be at Expo this year, maybe we'll have you on afterwards, and we can talk about your impressions
That would
of
be
the event
incredible.
if you
Unfortunately,
get
so we
there.
have to bid in October of the previous year for the
Yeah.
next year. So I have to have the dates that I want off in mind in October of every year.
Ah.
So I think I'm going to try to make it happen next year. So if you guys are around next year, maybe a possibility. And
It'll
I'm
Fingers
curious.
probably
crossed that
Yeah,
we're
fingers
still
crossed. We'll see what happens.
good.
I also got to get permission from the wifey here. So,
Sure.
the boss.
Understood.
yes, yes.
No,
She's like, "You're going to Vegas? Can
yeah,
I come?" Well, no,
just
it's just going to be me. It's just going to be me nerding out. No, I want to go. Okay, all right. Well,
Right.
yeah, just
Right.
yeah,
Well,
just to be clear, Dulles will be there. I will not. I
yes,
have
I'll be there.
prior engagements and stuff
Yeah.
again, scheduling
Yeah.
and all that. So hopefully next year, now that I know that's on our radar, now that I know that we're doing the podcast, I think there's better things for it, and I think we're going to continue to grow. We have great guests like you on, and
oh, too
hopefully I'm
kind,
going to
too
make
kind.
yeah.
Yeah, so far you guys have been nailing it. I really enjoyed watching some of the people that like Raul. Oh man, I
He's
could
great.
listen to that guy for hours.
And he'll
He's
talk for hours
hilarious.
too.
Yes,
Right.
he will. He will. Ask me how I know. But but they're absolutely incredible. Just so far, I love the folks that you brought on. Look forward to seeing what you guys have in store for the future. Really exciting for this channel. I really hope you guys take off. I'll be recommending you all to my friends and pretty much everybody I got around me. So,
Well, thank you.
I
And
really
yeah, of
appreciate
course.
that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of
Thank
course,
you
of
very
course.
much. Well, and as always, thank you, Hawks. Again, we really appreciate you being on. And as I say, we'll look forward to having you back again
That'd be
in the near.
fantastic. Anytime,
Yeah,
guys. Would
yeah,
love it.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you again. All right, Felix. Well, we've had another episode this week, and apologize to all of you who maybe are putting in comments that we won't see since it's not live, but we'll go back and
yes,
check them
we will go back and check them. Yes.
after it premieres. So thank you all, and we'll see
Thank
you
you very
soon.
much, and we'll see you soon. Yes.